talking about that for many men, mental health struggles don't look like sadness. They can show up as anger, withdrawal, overwork, addiction, exhaustion, feeling disconnected from family and friends. And we're moving beyond the stereotypes and having a really honest conversation about what men are experiencing right now, why so many are suffering in silence, and crucially, what support really looks like. We've got mental health advocates with us today, Scott Armstrong from mental counselling psychologist, Mark Samways, and community builder Manat DiGiorno. I've had a message, and it's not even a question, guys, about loneliness, which we're going to come to in a minute. But I wanted to ask you this, and Manny, I'll start with you. Finish the sentence. Being a strong man today means what?
Means understanding the weaknesses that you hold and how to start working on those.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
What about you, Scott?
It's about understanding that you can be terrified of this question, and that Manny was all going to say something far more profound than me and beat me to it. No, I think it's about understanding you can be kind to yourself and cut yourself some slack and start having that conversation with yourself, because everybody else is going to form their opinions of you, but it's your ultimately wherever you go, there you are.
Absolutely.
You need to have that conversation with yourself.
Mark, you come from it from a slightly different point of view as a psychologist, but and I think even that word strong is quite an interesting one, because it means so many different things to different people. Well, what does it mean to you and to the people that you work with, do you think?
To me, if I were to finish that sentence, it would be communicating. I think if you look at what men struggle with the most is communicating. So to sort of flip that on its head and say, what does strength mean? It means communicating. And yeah, as soon as we start to do that, as we've all been sharing, it does become easier. But that jump from theorizing that it will become easier to then actually communicating is terrifying.
But sometimes it's even saying something to yourself before you even say it to someone that you love and trust, or could be a mental health professional, which comes back to exactly what you just said, Manny, about self-awareness and actually taking the time to think, hang on, am I, and I'm not saying happy and like a kind of skipping through the fields, but am I content?
Am I taking time?
Exactly.
There's so much noise. Am I spending moments in my days or my weeks where I can just sit and internalize, actually, what am I actually feeling? So many of us don't.
No. Well, we've had a message here, and it's not, as I said, a question as such, but we've touched on loneliness in a few different ways. But Dee's reached out on 4001 saying, I'm divorced and only have my children every other weekend, and that's when the loneliness hits me hard, when they're not with me. I mean, any time of transition, be it moving to a new country, starting a job, losing a job, I would even argue, starting a relationship, and in this case, ending a relationship, is a huge emotional toll, Mark. And I'm not saying that Dee needs to, reach out and get therapy, but can I ask you, and this sounds like such a basic question, but I think it's a real barrier to a lot of people getting mental health support, is what does therapy look like? Because as Brits, it feels like, it's going to be Frasier or some, you know what I mean? Or like some kind of, leather sofa or, whatever. Like, I think it feels very other and abstract and scary. And it isn't. And it can be literally life-saving. Would you mind just explaining what might happen, if a man out there who is listening and he's feeling lonely or disconnected or stuck and thinks, do you know what? I'm going to make that appointment. I'm going to pick up the phone because my wife's threatening me with divorce, or I've got, to borrow your phrase from earlier, I need to take some kind of action. What might happen on the other side of that door? Yeah,
sure. So my initial sessions are pretty similar in the way in which I work, and I know a lot of other therapists will. I always say this is a confidential space, go through all of sort of the permutations of that. And I said, today is as much about you getting to know me as the other way around, because therapy doesn't work unless you feel safe. So let's have an honest conversation as much as we can in this first session. And if you don't like me, tell me, because it's just not going to work. And all of a sudden it sort of empowers them that they're here for them. And you can see this kind of shift. And we'll talk about anything. We might talk about the World Cup coming up. We might talk about, some guys just want to jump straight in and they're like, oh, this is happening. Or they'll talk to me about loads of random stuff. And that's what I really love about I learn so much. So it can be anything and everything.
What I found after going to therapy, and stops and starts over the years. So sometimes you go in thinking you're going to talk about one thing and you end up talking about something completely different for an hour. And you're like, I didn't realise that was underpinning it all. And then, Manny, same question to you in terms of everything that you've built with mentality, men's community. I immediately, and forgive my, kind of lazy stereotype, I'm like, is this going to be a bunch of guys, sitting in a circle crying? Because I don't know many men that want to go to that. The reality is quite different. Would you mind explaining the various ways that you connect?
Yeah, so we have lots of different event types, right? Anything from supper clubs, where you're sat with a random bunch of people talking about lots of different things, be it life, be it background, be it work, be it relationships. We don't hold anything taboo. We don't hold any kind of barriers to conversation, because we understand that as men we go through all these different things, and there's likely somebody else sat with you that will go through it. Yes, of course we do the kind of get-togethers, that what you imagine to be a men's circle, or what's considered to be a men's circle, but it's not all of us sitting down crying and holding hands and singing Kumbaya. It's not that at all. It's just a space just to feel yourself and understand that there are other people in the room that resonate with how you're feeling, and we can share stories, we can share anecdotes, we can share things that we've done that have helped us, and maybe it might work for you, maybe it won't, but we're not there to say you're condemned or you must do it this way.
What I like is it's intentional.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like, randomly, as I said, kind of sitting down with your wife and her husband, and you're like, and that might be, Scott, as you said earlier, Dubai's a transitional place. You might have built your circle and they've left, or you might be brand new and you don't know how to meet people. And as we know, it is all about who you know here, personally, professionally, emotionally. Yeah. So I just like the idea of guys just showing up and being like, I'm open to having conversations. I want to add a few numbers to my phone book and kind of get real for a night. And then, Scott, you kind of connect communities in a completely different way with mental. You've got the awards, you're going into workplaces, and we have alluded to job insecurities and unhappiness in the workplace. And just lastly, I wondered if you could have the power to help people feel more psychologically safe at work, what workplaces can do to support men in particular. Are there any initiatives, anything you're seeing or anything you'd love to see that would go a long way?
So many things. I mean, we've just written a massive white paper which was based on all of the winners of the awards over the last 3 years. And actually, when you take a step back and you look at what organisations are doing, there's actually quite a lot that's really, really good. We saw ADNOC that were creating different sets of benefits for different sets of life stages. So we had Baker McKenzie that had really good parental paternity leave, to support men that way. We had WSP in the Middle East, this construction thing, and they'd started all these different sub-communities within the kind of, the community of WSP, but then they got menopause, they got men's, they'd got all sorts of different kind of sub-communities. So creating community can be really, really powerful inside an organisation, and not just expecting people to turn up and go, well, it's the overarching, we're all working for the brand. It's actually creating places where people can talk to their different kind of sub-communities.
Which ties exactly back to this idea of intentionality.
Yeah.
About it is a choice for a company to lean into that. It is a choice for a man to look in the mirror and have an honest conversation. It is a choice to block off a night in your diary for you, or to go out and meet people, to speak to a mental health professional. And I'm so glad that you're all here today. Any final words, Scott?
Well, I was just going to say, coming back to what Manny said, and I'm a weeper, so when you do the station where they're crying and holding hands, I'm in. But we've done some stuff as well with CEOs. And the one thing, that loneliness, the one thing that they all took away from having a conversation and sharing was, it's not just me. And it is that isolation and that alone, and we think it's just us, and it's not. And the majority of us, all of us, are struggling with something.
Literally, I was just about to say the exact same thing, and this conversation is a microcosm of that. Talking about marriage, about work, about late stage diagnosis, about abuse, about generational impacts as well. Every single person listening today will have something that they are carrying, and I think we've really fallen into a trap of looking around and thinking that everyone's okay, comparing our insides to everyone else's outsides. And I'm really, really grateful for everything you've shared in terms of your own personal experiences, but also what you're doing to kind of move that conversation on. So Mark, Scott, Manny, absolute pleasure as ever. I knew it. We've run out of time. But I'm really grateful for your efforts, your conversations, and your generosity this afternoon. And I've had so many people asking for your details. So thank you all so much. If you do want the details of mentality, Mark Samways and the work he's doing at alkalma, you can, of course, just send hi, no question, no name, to 4001.